So, the witch? Tom questioned, as he walked back towards the entrance cave. Did she just make acid and throw it at us? No, she must have had it in a jar or something. She just hurled it at us, Dakota replied in a very sour tone. Can Lancaster do that? Yes, Tom, she can melt you alive if you gave her a jar of dragon acid. Tom got the memo to perhaps leave this for another time. That was interesting, though. He needed to find out more about these rituals. They were apparently Lancaster's specialty, after all. Remember when Dad used a translation circle on you? Dakota questioned after a bit, sounding a little sorry for snapping at him. Yeah, that was an experience. Remember the runes on the floor? That is the ritual. It's almost like an enchantment. It's just not permanent. With that, she can perform pretty much whatever magic she wants if she knows how to set up the ritual, often making the effect even more powerful too. Wait, so, like what the Inquisitor did, Lancaster could do that too? You will have to take that one up with her. I don't know. Dad can do translations and very basic mind reading. If you don't want him to see, though, he can't force you. And you need the materials too, of course. Right, Tom replied. At least that made sense as to why they hadn't used it for interrogations before. Next time we meet a witch, I say we throw one of these bad boys, Jackie added, patting the satchel grenade on her hip. If we had more space, then yes. I'm no demo expert, but that would probably have killed us all. Stick it up her ass when we go back there, Jordan sneered, his friendly demeanour utterly gone. Then you can have your test fire. Don't want to send her to heaven by accident, Sap protested half-heartedly. No way that piece of shit is getting in, one of the other guards responded. Closed, barred, and shut, another one added solemnly, glancing back the way they had come before nervously looking back ahead, clearly still on edge. They were not out of the woods yet. I just don't get it. Why didn't she run into the secret corridor to escape? Balathon questioned, currently in the lead and sounding rather nervous. Because then we would have looked for it and found it, Jordan replied. Whatever is in there, they don't want us to find it. I might not be that quick, but why not go somewhere else so we would go there? Jackie questioned. Maybe they knew we had a sniffer. Maybe they were running with the young and we caught them. Who knows? Dakota replied with a shrug, not taking her attention off the tunnel ahead. Maybe they were just damn proud of their little trick. Would it hurt if they fucked up too today? Jordan added, looking to Pablo. Tom looking to Dakota expectantly. Yes, Tom, she could likely make that too, but since it stayed up after she died, then it wasn't her, Dakota replied after a second of silence. Enchantment then? Tom questioned. Or another witch? Tom really didn't want to run into another one of those bastards. The only one here who had even a chance of taking a hit like that was Jackie, and he really didn't want to have that theory tested. They had been first back to the entrance cave, the elements that had been left to guard quickly getting to work helping out with the wounded. The healer from Jordan's crew, called Kolk, was, luckily enough, very experienced with burns. She had stayed behind, so they had a healer with each group, Dakota filling the role for their party. Antidotes for Jolter poison were also retrieved. It was apparently not a very fast-acting poison, instead being meant to break you down slowly and make you easier to eat, as well as somewhat pickling you for storage, a notion Tom didn't find comforting for some odd reason. Neither Jordan nor Dakota were looking particularly brilliant, the Major having picked up an acid burn on his foot too, but Pablo was by far the worst off. Despite their efforts, he looked awful. He wasn't even able to speak, and large patches of skin were blackened and falling off. The hasty work of Dakota and the potion had formed a sort of translucent skin over the burns. Tom had given the guy a painkiller, not daring to go for two, even if he really looked like he needed it right now. Tubbs, Oleg, and Peeler. Victoria was right, I see, just an easy trip. 2 lancers and a brilliant swordsman dead in a fucking cave. Glera spat angrily. Jordan looked up at her without saying a word. What's next? Are you going to die on me too? Or perhaps Pablo? What about you lot? Some mighty fearsome warriors you are. What happened? Got too close to your own bomb? A witch got us in an ambush. Not much to do at that point. And those crazy bastards scored more kills than us, Jordan protested, flinching at the pain as his arm was delicately removed from the burned areas. Yeah, what the fuck is that thing even? The unwounded rearguard questioned, putting aside the Major's armor pieces. My ears hurt like hell when you fire that thing, it's so damn loud. It's a shotgun, very handy down there. Light, nimble, and can put anything on his ass if it isn't too heavily armoured. Handy indeed, Jordan replied, looking to Tom. I'm guessing that isn't for sale either? Nope, Tom replied, checking to make sure the gun was unsafe before leaning it against the wall. You know the deal. Yeah. Until death and destruction. Still beats me how that thing could do it. It's not that good. Don't worry, though. I'm not going to try to steal it. It had taken close to an hour before Victoria returned with her group, the Colonel stopping to stare at the mess in front of her as she stepped into the cave. "What the fuck happened?" "Which?" Jordan replied, Victoria's face turning furious. "Those conniving little dunrats! Did you at least do the decent thing and kill it?" "Oh, she's dead," Jackie replied, wiping a bit of non-existent filth from a halbert's blade. "Found a secret door too, and they didn't want us down there," Jordan added. "It should have just gone somewhere else," Dakota added. "Led us right to it." "Secret door to where?" Victoria questioned, looking to Pablo. He was lying on the ground still, being tended to by Colk, the healer from Victoria's group, getting to work on Jordan. "Don't know, some kind of corridor. We needed the smoke and acid to subside before going down there." "You use grenades underground?" "What would you have done? Throw people at the problem till we are all dead? We are going back down there to get the dead and figure out where that door goes." "That we are. Did you make sure they are not coming back?" "They were practically a puddle by the time we left. They are not fixing that." "Good. How many wounded?" "Just 4. I'm good, though." "As a medical professional, you are ordered to stay here," the healer protested, almost mechanically. "Not a chance. Fix him up. We are going to need him," Victoria countered. The healer just nodded, looking back to the burned arm. "Can't hunt witches without a witch hunter," Jordan joked with a strange smile. "I'm staying here," Dakota let out from her spot, leaning against the wall. It wasn't a hard sell when her face was covered in wet bandages. Tom volunteered half a painkiller for her too. The fact she took it spoke volumes about just how much it hurt. "Ray, would you rather stay here? Might need an assistant if I'm to fill in for Colk," Dakota questioned. The scrawny woman contemplated for a second before nodding silently, looking a touch ashamed. Dakota just pulled a smile. "Nothing to be ashamed of. I could use the company." "Very good. Dakota and Cole, stay here and tend to our wounded. Revy, you're coming with us," Victoria ordered, looking around the room. "We have a job to do, people. 5-minute break. Grab what extra gear you need, and let's go kill the bastards." Saf questioned to herself whether it was worth it to try and get a spot tending to the wounded like Ray. A bruised tail wouldn't be much of an argument, though. "No, I'm not a damn coward. I can do this," she cursed, looking around at the others getting ready to move again once Jordan was considered sufficiently fixed up. Taking a deep breath, she went over her kit one more time just to be sure, checking that everything was in order, which of course it was. She still had one of those special arrows left. She had to give it to Jackie. It had felt damn addicting to fire the previous one. Tom and Jackie seemingly had a little talk in private, Tom not seeming very pleased at all. Saf guessed he probably had objected to going back in there, but it was pretty clear what Jackie's position would be on that subject. There were no objections from Tom, though, when they moved out, but he wasn't exactly enthusiastic either. Jackie, though, was definitely still on a mission, Tom sticking as close as he could get away with. As they made their way back down the tunnels, they were on their guard all the way down, yet nothing bad happened. It was perfectly quiet. The bodies were all still there, everything being as they left it. They dragged their dead out of the corridor, putting them in the room with 2 sentries to watch over them until they returned to take the bodies back with them. It had been at least 2 hours, and most of the acid appeared to have eaten itself into the rock, even if the bodies were still making a sickening sizzling noise. They had brought more soda, getting the corridor mostly safe to traverse. Victoria and her crew had at least taken point from here on in, and with this many people down here, it did feel a lot safer, even if it also meant Saf couldn't have fired at anything if she had to, and Tom definitely couldn't have done so with his shotgun. Going through the wall was a touch odd, but on the other side it quickly led into a much larger tunnel, the two meeting at a T-junction. It seemed almost like the smaller tunnel had been dug into the big one. The floor was smooth, and there were even remnants of what might be wheel tracks in the stone, as if there had been a lot of traffic here back in the day. They had moved out to secure their entry point, Balathon going to have a sniff. "A lot more people going this way," he went, pointing down the right. "Right it is then," Victoria replied, the formation swinging around. In the larger tunnel, they could actually form a proper formation. It helped that they had the numbers this time around. Coming to a junction, there were actually signs hanging on the wall. "Huh, well, would you look at that?" Victoria let out in surprise, looking at the rather ruined sign. "Signs? But for who?" Micah questioned, scratching his ear a little. "Old miners, I guess. Look, the letters are all funny," Jackie replied. "It's ancient. People spoke funny back then," Victoria clarified, pointing down the left tunnel. "It says Storage Hub 42, I think, whatever that means." "That's where the trail is going," Balathon confirmed, Victoria nodding as they made their way down that tunnel. As Sapphire walked past, she had a look at the odd sign. It definitely looked old, and it was rather hard to read, but it was still rather fascinating to see writing this old. "Storage for what?" Tom questioned, receiving a shrug from Victoria. "I bet it's gems or gold," Jackie replied, actually sounding a little excited. She'd always liked exploring, so it kind of made sense. It wasn't as cramped in here either, but Sav still didn't like the thought they were walking into a trap, Or might have been surrounded already. If it stored anything, it was likely to be filth anyway. Whoever built this place was long gone, and whatever might have been worth something would be long gone too. Going down the corridor, not much changed until they got to a section of the tunnel that looked like it might have been a doorframe once. There wasn't really anything left except the nicely cut hole in the stone that led to a large room. This, though, was definitely a room rather than a cave. Real work had gone into smoothing the walls and carving out paths in the floor. Several tunnels, all of a similar size to the one they had entered through, leading off in all directions. There wasn't much in here, though. Well, there have certainly been people in here, Balathon said as the formation spread out, still wary, although there didn't seem to be many places to hide in here. Why would there be a hidden entrance to this place? It's just a mine, right? Saf questioned, looking around. Surely this wasn't all supposed to be a secret. It was very narrow too. This place is big. I don't think they are the same age, Victoria replied. It doesn't feel that similar. Think they've been digging for something? Jordan replied, clearly pondering the idea. The forelegs on those beasts can definitely dig, Tom added. Just look at what they did to Jax's back. Warm-blooded too. They can just keep going, Sergeant Kalinke added, looking to Tom. So, this is the old mine. Why didn't they just find the entrance? There's no way they could have dug for this if they didn't know roughly where it was, Victoria let out, clearly confused by all this. Sapphire had to agree. She didn't see any good reasoning either. Maybe it's been blocked off, Jordan added. That begs the question. What is down here? Is this going to be one of those stories where an evil thing was locked away and shouldn't get out? Jackie questioned, as if that was something very familiar to her. Sapphire glared at her, trying to convey, do not say that, as clearly as possible through staring alone. If that's the case, it's a safe bet the evil bastards are trying just that. Which way did they go? Victoria asked, looking to Balathon, who started moving around the room. A few guards stayed with him, just in case. Someone's coming, one of Jordan's crew let out, pointing to one of the far side tunnels. Down there, marching feet on stone. Spread out and cover that entrance. Make an ambush, no loud weapons, Victoria ordered, all of them moving to give whoever was coming a bad day. After a minute or so, Sapphire also picked up the sound. There were quite a few, but it was hard to tell with the echoing stone. What emerged was a small group of 4 darklings who had apparently completely failed to figure out the ambush they had just walked into. Bows and crossbows filled them with shafts before the front line moved up to finish them off. It was a very clean takedown, and none of the party even received a scratch, most of the darklings not even getting their weapons out. Very good. Let's find out where they came from, Victoria ordered, gesturing down the tunnel. Is it normal to have this many in one place? Tom questioned, looking to the 4 dead rather worriedly. If there is another witch around, I expect a lot more, Victoria replied. That's comforting, Tom replied, clearly on edge. Sapphire just kept her mouth shut, focusing on what was ahead, trying not to think about the details. Secret doors, old mines, and shit that's been locked away and shouldn't be touched. What was this, D&D or something? Tom cursed to himself, remembering some of the mortality rates from back in the day. No, you idiot. Shut up and soldier. Clear the buses out, let the guards do the lifting, and get home safe. That was all he had to worry about right now. For now, that meant finger on the trigger and goggles down, ready for anything. It turned into quite the walk as he pondered just how big this system was. In the other tunnels, they had to move slowly and carefully over the rough and, at times, slippery floors. Here, though, it was mostly just a pleasant walk. There had to be several kilometres of these tunnels, and there was no way they could search them all in one go. That meant Sniffer Boy Balathon was on point. Kalinke could apparently only smell corruption on something that had been in a bit more contact than a Darkling walked here. Though he did get a whiff of corruption from time to time, he assured them it wasn't anything too bad. Noise ahead, the guy from Jordan's crew, who apparently had good ears, called out in a low tone, the formation coming to a stop to let him listen for a second. Not marching. Might be digging, actually. I say we find out, Victoria replied. Quiet as can be. They moved forward slowly, Tom cursing the sound of their claws on the stone. Quiet my ass. Not that he was silent himself, the interlocking plates making a slight clacking noise as he walked. It was still less than their damned clawed feet. How come the guy with the loudest weapon in history can move like a ghost? Jordan questioned Tom, ironically enough, not having noticed the man moving up beside him. Good boots, Tom replied with a shrug. And I'm far from quiet right now, he went, clinking the shotgun against the plates on his lower arm. Noted. Boss, that sign says vault, one of the lead swordsmen let out, looking to another sign on the side of the tunnel where a smaller tunnel joined. I guess we know what they're working on then, Jordan concluded. Question is, should it stay in there, or do we want it? Let's stop them first, then figure it out, Victoria replied, continuing the advance. It took them at least 10 minutes of slow moving before Tom could start to hear the digging sound too. He was still distant, but they could hear both picks, or maybe hammers, and what sounded like big bashes or something. It was definitely metallic too. Just in case, he reloaded with slugs. A box shot likely wouldn't do much against a fully grown night terror, if that was what they were dealing with. Not that he could figure out how they might have got one in here. They passed several large doorways that all looked like they had been forced or battered open. Bits and pieces lay strewn around the place. The tunnel remained the same size, but there were more decorations too as they passed through these doorways. Then came a massive metallic thunk that echoed through the entire length of the tunnel. Tom looking to Saf and Jackie worriedly. What was that? Might have been the vault door, Victoria let out, sounding like she was thinking. They can't have whatever it is. Quick march, she ordered after a second. And so they did, going into a half run. No one say a word. They might think we had the group from earlier. That sounded like a very far shot to Tom, but as they approached, the sounds had stopped, meaning either the darklings were done, or they had heard them coming. They got the answer as a black robed figure came running around a corner, about 100 meters down the corridor, looking very surprised, freezing in place with a hand held high, as if they were going to wave. They never got the chance as Saf fired, taking the target in the face and sending them screaming to the floor. Charge! Victoria shouted out, the formation going into a full run. Tom struggled to keep up with them, the front line pulling away with ease. At least Jackie stayed with him, and Saf was seemingly not in the rush either, drawing another arrow. Jordan peeled off to deal with the rogue figure as they rounded the corner. On the other side, they were faced with a disorganized force consisting of at least a dozen darklings and a fully grown night terror. The beast was wearing some kind of harness hooked up to a large metal door that was now lying on the floor. The front line spread out in the face of the massive creature, the ranged combatants taking aim. That thing could not be allowed to stay on his feet. Tom let rip with both barrels, Sapphire sadly having had a standard arrow knocked, burying it in the creature's neck as the guard's crossbows joined in, peppering it with shafts. Jackie moved up, letting loose with the revolver, firing all 6 in one go, before holstering the gun and standing her ground in front of Tom and Sapphire. That clearly got the creature's attention, as it strained against its harness, claws scraping against the stone, dragging the massive metal door along the floor far quicker than Tom had hoped. Sapphire sprinted right, Tom electing to stay behind Jackie, fumbling to reload his shotgun. That was when Jackie charged, veering left and shouting, "Let's move it!" Tom scrambled to follow as she charged ahead at a flat sprint. Stupid fancy legs, he cursed, finally getting the gun loaded again. At least the door was slowing down the terror, as the guard kept peppering it with fire, the halberdiers moving in to further harass the beast, as the swordsmen were engaging the darklings. Tom and Jackie still had his attention though, as he strained against the harness to follow them, causing the massive door to swing around the far side of the room. Right, boom arrow this time, Saf cursed, as she knocked the heavy arrow, like she probably should have done right away, noticing only just in time where the door was going. She took a running jump into the air, driving her wings down hard to clear the massive slab of metal, readying her shot. Lights out! What she got was a small thunk as the arrow hit, did fuck all, and then fell to the ground and exploded right next to Kalinki, who was currently trying to climb onto the frenzied beast's back. God fucking damn it, Tom! Sapphire roared out in frustration, just as the crack of his shotgun rang out anew, planting 2 shots in the terror's front. That did seem to do something at least. Now on the wing, Saf had a quick scan of her surroundings, just to make sure no one was lining her up for a shot. Of course, there were. 3 darklings had taken up position at the opening to the vault, 2 of them deciding she was a good target. There was not much room to maneuver as they both fired. She instead strained to bend their arrows up into the ceiling before drawing her own bow and nailing one in the throat just as Maiko made it to their position. The enemy melee fighters had been utterly routed in the chaos, many had not even carried weapons, and had been fighting using picks and hammers. The archers were not ready for a swordsman that close, and were both cut down in short order. Saf banking into a turn to circle, flying over Maiko's head. The Night Terror's attention had finally been split by the multiple attackers coming at it from all directions, Kalinki doing his best to hang on as it bucked and shaked to try and get him off. One of the chains from the harness snapped, sending it whipping across the room. In its frenzied attempt to shake Kalinki, it ended face to face with Jackie, who immediately tried to step back out of range as the Terror took the opportunity to swipe at her with one of his massive forelegs, sending her flying into a wall. Tom let out a scream as he drew his revolver, firing once to get the creature's attention. Then he let rip with the remaining 5, going for the face. One round whistled past Sapphire, taking her breath away for a second, as she felt a puncture in her wing, looking at the small hole in the membrane wide-eyed. The creature was mortally wounded, staggering back and raising up onto his hind legs, swiping wildly in front of it. His eyes likely done for as Victoria stepped in front of Tom. Then the crazy bitch charged. She was moving damn quick too, as she deftly slipped past the Terror's clumsy swipes, almost like she was dancing through them. Making her way under the Terror, she slashed away at the much smaller hind legs, her blade cutting deeper than Saf thought possible. She didn't stop her charge though, carrying on moving back out from under the monster as it collapsed, writhing around on the ground behind her. I was moving in to finish it off, just in case it had any other tricks left. Saf held the turn, heading for Jackie, who made it back up onto all fours, blood running out of the muzzle of her helmet and onto the floor. Tom sprinted over too as Saf came down beside her. "You okay there, girl?" "No," Jackie replied, as she weakly fiddled with her helmet, Saf moving to help her get it off. "Hurts." "Yeah," Saf replied, looking to the cracks of the wall where she had hit. "That's quite some armor, though," she admitted, trying to sound positive. That had been a killing blow if she had ever seen one. Hell, that might have been beyond even what the Nook's armor could handle, at least prior to reinscribing it with unicorn horn. "How are you feeling? Does your chest hurt?" Tom questioned, genuine panic in his voice. Jackie looked up at him with an expression that screamed, "You serious right now?" "Lay her down on her back and don't move," Lattori went, kneeling down beside her, helping Tom and Saf get Jackie onto her back as gently as possible. In the future, going up would have been a more effective dodge. "Noted," Jackie replied, pain clear on her face. "Don't speak, just rest. Victoria, she needs tending to." "That's just this one," Jordan shouted out. Saf looking over to see Balathon leaning against the wall. The Major was busy tying off the stump where Balathon's tail used to be. "Oh, for fuck's sake," Sapphire cursed, looking at the blaze stain on the chain that had snapped. The healer from Victoria's crew came over, kneeling next to Jackie, hardly trying to give her a once-over. "Ribs cracked, internal bleeding, fatal organ damage?" the healer stated as she set down her satchel. "You are a fucking idiot." "Fatal?" Tom shouted out after a second of processing what had just been said, Saf just freezing in place, Jackie looking confused at the healer. "If not fixed," the healer clarified, as if that should have been obvious, not looking up from her bag. "I don't have time for you. Drink this," she continued with a hint of a sigh, bringing out a small red phial. Saf recognised as the same stuff Pablo had gotten. "At least they aren't skimping on us," Saf thought to herself as she stared at Jackie, still in a bit of a shock. It wasn't often you were told your best friend was going to die. She kind of wanted to give the healer a verbal shitstorm for scaring her like that, but that was hardly fair considering what that battle likely cost. She didn't reach a decision before the healer was back on her feet, moving to Balathon after having administered the bottle, leaving Sapphire looking at the now thoroughly shocked Jackie. Tom looked like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to hug her, instead just taking a hand as she lay there silently, just like she had been told.